And we're back here at EGL Live. I'm at SmellyMoss. The guy to my left is Chris Marsh
switched,
at Mellow Live. We're going to talk right now about the business of LAN, and obviously we're both heavily involved in kind of the overall production of the events. There's a few people behind the scenes, of course, Glenn, Dan, who's actually helping us right now with this cast, Pete, Nick Baker. Who else is there?
Cam's worth
Cam, of course. Cam is like the hero. Cam is the hero. He's basically the Incredible Hulk in the back. Anyway, so big shout out and thank you to them, of course, for making it all possible. But let's just first talk about finding a venue. And every single time we put on an event, this whole conversation happens. And I mean, people are probably having this conversation in the chat room now. You can see the chat on Deserto, on Halo Forum, on EU Esports about where the next location is going to be and so on. But it's really, really, really not that simple to find a venue. So let's just kind of discuss exactly what needs to go into that.
Obviously, straight away, there's internet connection, especially with Call of Duty. Even without Call of Duty, if it had LAN settings, then we'd, of course, need to be able to stream. The stream goes out at quite a high bit rate, doesn't it? Because people want to watch it in full HD. So you've got that.
And there's 5 of them.
So there's 5 of them at the moment. If that's if we don't, that's if the other games don't come back as well, which the announcement coming soon. So stay tuned for that. And so obviously we've got that, and then there's the power requirements. There's a lot of power. The national grid's probably thinking, what the hell's going on here as we drain half the country's power. Then we've got.
I'm going to stop you there because I just want to say about the power, because the internet's one thing, but the power is probably the actual beast of the whole operation, because it requires a ridiculous amount of power. Like, to give you an example is, so Loughborough as a venue, that was in a university campus. It was in a gymnasium. It had full 16 amp and 30 amp, the big plugs running into the venue. We still had to rent a generator to run the event. So we had a Jenny truck sitting at the back, pumping electricity into the venue for us. London, at EGL 4, we had, when we first went into the venue and we were discussing the options of how to get enough power, this is a football stadium we're talking about. There's a discussion about actually running power 30 amp cables from the pitch up into...
I think we did in the end.
No, we didn't have to do that in the end.
All right.
Because they ended up getting power. There's some other places closer. So, we have to take power from all kinds of places. That's a brand new football stadium that basically can't meet our power needs in like those smaller rooms. But obviously the venue itself has electricity. We just need to be able to run it in. So we have to rent all the cabling. We have to rent the breakout boxes and so on to do that. And then, of course, Blackpool, the venue itself has enough power, which is awesome. But then we have to run across the ceiling. You see those big drop downs. That's all the internet and the power connections coming down from the ceiling. That's all rented because there's nothing really like what we do.
No, it's true, because obviously people think that we have the entrance fee, and then that's it. It just goes into our back pockets. But it's just they don't see all the points where we get hit. Like, even the power alone costs a lot just for the physical power. And then there's all the cables, then there's all the stuff that we need to get the power in. I mean, before I got involved with this, I'd obviously done a lot, like helping with events, but no one really knows what goes into it until they do it themselves, and there is a lot more than you originally anticipate. I mean, there's a lot, there's some small events that are using halls that are already made up for them, so, you just go in, plug shit in, that's done. But at the same time, when you actually go into a completely external venue and you have to set it up yourself, you then realise, whoa, this is what you've got to do, and there is a lot to do when it comes down to it. I mean, even stuff like the runs that go under the tables and stuff like that you plug your monitor, your Xbox is plugged into, you'll just probably think nothing of that, but those alone are expensive, like very, very expensive kit.
All custom built.
Exactly. So it's the amount of different costs that go into it. People easily overlook it, but there's a lot to it.
So one of the nice things, like when people, you always, maybe not so much now, but I remember a few years ago when XL kind of disappeared with Conspiracy, there's some other people who are like, I know you guys obviously ran the first kind of EGL, in Manchester as a replacement, but at the same time, that was kind of an already made venue.
Exactly, yeah, that's what I mean. It's like had very little to do with it. I mean, we plugged our stuff in, but they did the rest. You know, they were going around, they were configuring the settings on the internet and stuff like that, so we could, you know, connect. Because even then, Call of Duty needed the internet to do it properly. So yeah, it was basically done for us, and even so, it kind of a lot of it went over our heads even then.
Well, imagine you would have had 113 teams for that.
Exactly, yeah, that would have been a bit of a disaster. It was basically shoehorning people into the room. So
but a lot of people after the Excel said, or the Excel fiasco said, "Oh, I'm going to start an event," and it's just you kind of just have to laugh at it because unless you've got a LAN center you're going to do it at, it costs you a lot of money, and most people don't have kind of the resources to do it properly, electricians, access to network experts, and so on. At the end of the day, it all costs money. So, we have to balance that. We do balance it with prize money. EGL's prize purse is the best in Europe, so you can't really argue with that. And at the end of the day, we also have to look at space versus cost. Most venues that are big enough, we're talking 2,600 square meters and larger, are we're talking a minimum of $8,000 for the 2 days of event, and then the day on either side, or the 2 or 3 days on either side for the setup and teardown. So that's $8,000 for like the cheapest venues. We're talking about race courses and things like that. Then you look at things like Emirates. There's people go quick off the top of my head, venues that people mention is like Alexandra Palace, Excel in London, the Earl's Court, places like
NEC.
that.
Yeah, NEC as well.
And the NEC is probably the biggest one because it's in Birmingham. It's right there. Telford, we're talking a minimum of £15,000 to rent those venues. So if that doesn't give you an idea of the cost of what it is,
and that's just for the hall. That's what we need to clarify. That's not the internet power and everything thrown in. That's just
the space.
And then you have to then pay for the power. You then have to pay for the internet. You then have to pay for everything else. You have to pay for, on a lot of these venues, you've got their own security that have to work there. So at the Emirates, when you saw the guys when they were leaving who weren't our security, they were their security. We like part of our costs were paying for them to be there because they had to be there, and that's they get you with these kind of things. So there's all that adds up to it.
Internet's like you're talking about a minimum of £600 to £1,000 to get a 30 meg connection even. You look at the cost. I actually tweeted the other day at SmellyMoss about the NEC costs, and it gives you, there's actually a breakdown for vendors. So if you're exhibiting at a show like Gadget Show, or say we actually had an event there, it gives you a breakdown of how much it costs to get power, to get internet, to get a 2 meg connection is like £300 or £400 from them. So that, it just all adds up at the end of the day. And a venue like the NEC, at the current kind of financial area that we're in, with the game money, with the fact that sponsors they're interested, there's lukewarm response, we're just not in a position to be able to offer something like the NEC. So again, it goes back to Blackpool and why it's the perfect venue for us, because it doesn't cost us very much at all, and we can put a lot more money into the infrastructure, the actual internet, the power, making the event bigger as a whole.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's all you have to say.
I mean, I think if people saw our accounts on, and they saw like our profit or loss from the various events we'd done, and I think they'd be extremely surprised. And I think a lot of people have changed the tune because it's a lot of it is a building process. Like obviously, I think a while back MLG they were talking with Bloomberg, was it? And despite everything that MLG have done, you look at them, it's like it's amazing. The whole experience is amazing. But then, like, even the woman on Bloomberg said something like, "Do you think this venture will make you profitable?" Which implies that they weren't previously profitable, which says a lot about a company like MLG, who have obviously, kind of links into what we'll be talking about later. But they've done a lot to make themselves bigger. They started charging for the streaming and stuff like that, and it says it all really about what we're trying to do. Like especially them, but us to a large extent as well. We're pioneers in this kind of industry. So it's there's a lot more than people than just meets the eye, so to speak.
I mean, you just brought it up, and a lot of people compare us, especially because of EGL5 and the fact that there was, previous MLG teams there, and now, especially with the, kind of the postponement of Halo Reach from MLG events, we're probably going to see a lot more American teams coming over here, which means that we're going to have to, up our game from that perspective. But it's put a lot of kind of limelight on EGL. We had DJ Wheat with Live on 3 discussing, EGL 5. It's a fairly large American video cast that's here on Twitch. And, we're talking thousands of Americans getting access to this. So the event's just going to grow. But at the same time, we're still, even though we have, 200 teams at our events, we're still at that, we've only done 5 events at the end of the day.
Yeah, and the first one didn't really count as anything. Yeah, that was just more of a launch kind of thing. The first Blackpool event was probably our first event with our realistic business model. So, the first event was amazing. It was, it was the peak. Probably, I'd go as far to say that in terms of like the kind of experience for the user, that was the best one so far. But we'll peak that. We'll go above that, I think, very soon. It's just a case of, since then, obviously, we've had Blackpool twice, had Loughborough, we've had London, and since then, they've kind of been more realistic, for going forward, it's more sustainable.
I think, things that we've talked about, turn up and play, obviously, iSeries is this weekend, so good luck to the WGL, the Warp Gaming League guys with that. They've got about 22 teams.
I think there's 22 at the moment. I think there's going to be a couple more, so I probably have 24 in the end. So
it's, that's in comparison from the console side of things, that's relatively small. And then keep in mind that iSeries, 99% of the people there are bringing their own kit. The thing that EGL does is we provide everything for you. So we've got 300 Xboxes, 50 or 60 of which don't work, but the amount of kit and infrastructure that we have just sitting in storage units and so on all the time is unbelievable, and that's where a lot of the money has to go.
Yeah, and that is another cost as well, because obviously you've got to buy the equipment and then you've got to put it somewhere. So, when it's waiting all year round, it's not in somebody's attic, because it's quite a big space that we occupy with all the stock. We've got a room just for monitors. I won't say where that is, because obviously if somebody turns up with a big lorry, they could be making a nice little profit, and we might not be, but... so it's, all these things, they add up, and, with all year round when you're paying for storage space and stuff like that, that's got to come from somewhere. We're not just like, I'm not shelling out, working in a shop part-time to pay for that. You know what I mean? So it's like, there's a lot to
it. My biggest worry has always been that someone would steal the hard drives from all the Xboxes.
Let's not go into that matter. Although, it is worth noting that we think from this last event, unfortunately, because of the way that we had to set it up with people bringing their own hard drives and stuff, but we also had to provide hard drives. We'll be reassessing the system for the next event, and people will have to rent them, I think. But with people doing that, I think a surprising number went missing for whatever reason, even though they're worth like 50p each. So it's kind of a waste of everyone's time. I mean, it's meant that we've had to reassess our system. And
it actually cost the thief money to steal the hard drive.
Yeah, it wasn't worth it. He would have had to steal 120 to make his ticket back.
So, well, I mean, is there anything you want to add kind of to the business of LAN? Obviously, I guess the final aspect is, the setup, the testing, and the volunteers. Like, there's only, the core staff only consists of, 5-6 people. And then beyond that, there's volunteers who have to help. And the quality of finding good volunteers versus the volunteers who arrive, pick up an Xbox, and then sit down with their mates and watch is pretty high.
Yeah, I mean, it is. But then again, a lot of people, they don't want to come to the event and, walking through and I'm just whipping and saying, right, get on, you pick up that Xbox, put it there, and just constantly going 1,000%, full force. So I can I can understand why they it's leisurely or whatever. But yeah, it's extremely hard to find highly dedicated volunteers. I mean, if you just look at websites like Halo Forum, like Scout Forum, the amount of people who will say, I'm interested in getting involved with writing content, doing staffing, and dabble a little bit, do it for about a week, and then just get bored. And it's the exact same thing at the events, really. I mean, most people there are young and stuff, but it's just like you're paying for the experience as well. A lot of people, they don't necessarily want to help out, but then again, there are people who actually love helping out and coming to events early, and kind of been a part of that setup process.
Well, it's always the same people, though, event after event, and it's always, you kind of know who those volunteers are as soon as you arrive, because you kind of see the banter and stuff that they have with us, and
they already know
quite a few of the admins.
Yeah.
Well, and again, if you're at home and you're watching this and you think that you could you have a skill set that perhaps EGL could benefit from, be it web design, be it being able to lift things. That's a skill set we love.
Yeah, well, I mean,
streaming.
we had a PS3 player, didn't we? Obviously, doing the album with the electrician work. So that was beneficial to us. Obviously, like, you know, gamers pitching in every aspect of things, and he had a cherry picker license, so he obviously had to go to the top and like bring the power down for us and stuff, alongside like their cherry picker guy. So yeah, that was handy as well. So, you know, if you've got any kind of skill that you think will be useful, I think get in contact.
I think that the cherry picker thing is a good example. You need a license to go up on those things. That's a huge benefit to us if there's more people who can do that, because if there's one person there and they've been there for 15 hours helping us set up, they want to go to bed, if there's someone else around, that would be fantastic. We've got more coming up here on EGL Live. We're going to be back in just a moment with some information on the PEGI rating system and, of course, the influence it is having on the evil government of the UK. We'll be back in a moment.